Good morning and happy Thursday. Welcome to OMG, Oh My Government. I'm Jamila Bey. We do this each Thursday. This is the show where we consider all things America, her people, and whatever else is going on. I'm so excited this particular hour. I'm always excited. Every time I come in here, I'm excited. It's always a good day here on K Street. But today, we're going to be talking a little bit later in the show with Carolyn Johnson. She is the head of Diversity Inc. And we're going to be talking about, how to do this without an FCC fine. We're going to be talking about the crap show that's happening because the person occupying 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue has decided to go full on. NPR says you're not to call the term racist. So let's see. He's gone full on allowing people to use racial language against non-white members of Congress. And to be blunt, it's maddening. It's shameful. And we really do see ourselves in a position of those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. So later this hour, we're going to be talking about this moment in our democracy, particularly from the lens of Black women who, as you well know, listening to this program, I love to tout the fact that Black women are the likeliest of all U.S. demographics to hold a college degree. We are the likeliest to start our own businesses. We are invested here. We do this country. We love this country. And I even say that it's up to us to make sure that this country continues to serve everyone here and live up to the promise that the founders intended. Big asterisk, slavery. 202-588-0893. I want to hear from you today. It's been a few weeks where we haven't gotten a whole lot of calls because I've gone on and on, but I do want to hear from listeners today. I want to find out what's going on in your mind. How do you think we should be talking about this moment in history? I am inclined to do a lot of teeth sucking and saying, I told you so. This is not even something that's shocking if you know anything about history, but when you don't make your kids read Orwell and you don't recognize that, the state running media is a bad thing, this is the kind of thing we get. That's one thing. Also, let's not forget that, the news is going to be kind of crazy next week. We've got Jeffrey Epstein, who's that indictment came down. He will not be able to make bail, charged for trafficking children. That happened in Brooklyn, New York. This is my particular thought train right now. The fact that you had that indictment in Brooklyn and the fact that you have also R. Kelly charged with child trafficking in Brooklyn. It seems like there's a whole lot happening in the state of New York in terms of litigating against these sex crimes. We don't know. I personally don't know what is all going to come out. I'm looking ahead and I'm really interested to follow this. I definitely do not want to let this go. I think it's really important that we who believe in, bodily autonomy, particularly of young girls and young people, not let this go. And it's hard because there's a lot going on. But the R. Kelly thing is a big deal. The Jeffrey Epstein thing is a big deal. And the fact that it's coming out of the same place where you have Donald Trump named in that Epstein suit means that you've got a whole lot of lawyer power working on it. So we are definitely going to be talking about that. We're definitely not going to let that story pass us by. And, all on top of everything else, we're still trying to make heads or tails of the democracy under which we live right now. So I want to hear if there is anything locally going on that you feel like needs a bigger audience. What's happening in Washington, D.C., that you feel like we need to definitely be looking at and following? One of the things that I want to point out is we've been having locally this conversation about the circulator buses. Should they remain free? One camp says DC residents do not need to be paying for tourist transportation. The circulators are big, bright red buses that tourists like to get on. They go to places that tourists like to go. That's not the responsibility of Washingtonians to be coming out of pocket for folks who are here from other places. The other argument is, as a matter of fact, Washingtonians absolutely do use the circulator and ride it to work, to doctor's appointments. And even if we do want to see the tourist popular attractions in our own town, it should be an amenity that serves the people here in this city. And a number of the stops that the circulator buses go through do indeed serve some of our lower income and our senior residents in this town. And keeping that is something that this city should be absolutely doing. So, from someone who lives in Southwest, that's me, and hearing how some of these bus routes are likely to be diverted so that they're taking people to the stadiums as opposed to taking seniors to high rises and my own kid to his home. I feel like this is a perfect example of the fall. How do we say the economic expansion in these areas and serving the more moneyed, newer residents here rather than those who have been here for a long time. So, we've got a lot to talk about in terms of our transportation. We know that Washington is experiencing, despite all the people coming in, our longtime residents, we're losing those folks. They tend to be moving out or being moved out. And this particular topic has to, this is something else that we've got to make sure we're going. So we're going to keep covering. Yeah, so that's that. I see we've got a caller on the line. I want to go ahead and start listening to some of you because, again, I admit, recently I've been doing a whole bunch of shows where we've not really gotten to hear your voices. So please let me correct that. Let me make that up to you now, starting now. So I'm going to get this first caller on the line, 202-588-0893. Your voice is important. Call in. Good morning. Welcome to OMG.
Good morning, Jamila. This is Sandra Butler Truesdale, and I just wanted to touch base with you to let you know that I am so in agreement with you about the transportation in Southwest having to do with the National Stadium. Mm-hmm. I have been writing to Charles Allen and the chair of the D.C. City Council regarding the bus stop that was located right there at 14th and, I'm sorry, not 14th, but 4th and M Street. Mm-hmm. That goes down Delaware Avenue.
Yes.
And they moved the bus stop so senior citizens that live in that senior development have to walk all the way from at least 3 blocks or be pushed 3 blocks or on, walking on walkers 3 blocks to get to their location. And while Charles told me he was going to look into it, I sent it to his community representative, and I have heard nothing. I've called, and I've heard nothing, and I'm so concerned about that. Even though that's a church and a new development right there.
Yes.
And so they moved the entire bus stop. How do you do that? And when it's pouring down raining, a Metro bus driver decides not to have any humanity and not let a person off near that building.
Yeah, I want to thank you for this call. That particular intersection, the 4th and M, the 4th and Delaware, that that's senior housing but you have, you have that corridor that gets a lot of bus usage from children, from seniors, from everybody really. But, the fact that, the National Stadium traffic has been considered, and I also want to point out that forgive me, I misspoke. RFK is completely not what I'm talking about. The soccer stadium.
Yes.
The soccer stadium is now on that bus route.
Yes.
So dropping off. So for people who want to talk about, we needn't pay, we Washingtonians need not pay for tourist transportation, but it's okay to pay for these multi-million dollar corporations that are about the business of entertainment, getting people to their soccer games, getting people to their baseball games. Hey, that's my neighborhood. I'm happy it's there. It's putting people to work. I don't like the parking it's causing, but it's putting people to work.
May I tell you this? May I tell you this? I also, about 2 weeks ago, I rode public transportation. I sat at the bus stop at 7th and M Street trying to get a 74 to go to Southwest for more than 2 hours. And when the guy came, he was so rude and driving so fast, the senior citizens almost were falling down. I took pictures of a senior citizen in a wheelchair, not strapped to the bus. I mean, I'm so glad you're bringing this up because it needs to be heard. The people who live in the project down there are completely forgotten. And those of us who live in the middle of that, I live between National Stadium and the new soccer stadium.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so
I want to ask a couple of questions real quick because you're in the hottest piece of real estate in the city right now. Have you noticed more police patrols?
Yes.
Have you noticed more scooters and public bikes?
Yes.
Have you noticed better walkability? You know, I know what it used to be like over there. Do you find it easier to walk around?
I find it not only easier to walk around, but even if you want to talk about pleasantness, you know, actually there's a whole different kind of mindset towards the new people who have bought into 4th Street, right by the waterfront station, and Westminster. It's a whole different setup, my sister, and I'm telling you, one of the things that I will say, and I'm going to let you go because it's not a conversation between you and I will say that Pastor Lamar at Metropolitan AMN, I know you know about this, we did a walkthrough to see what was going on with the people who have lived down there for longer than I have, and what is going on with them as far as housing is concerned. Will they be there? The only reason we'll be there is because we went to the Historical Society and became claimed as a historical site. So they can't move us or tear us down. You see what I mean? And Absolutely. So I'm telling you that there are people who are going to be in the streets. Do you hear me, Jamila?
Yes, yes.
I'm telling you, sister girl, we better wake up, okay?
I agree with you. I thank you so much for your call, and
I appreciate I appreciate you, sister.
Oh, you be well. You be well. Yeah. We're going to get this next caller on. Good morning. Welcome to OMG.
Yes. Good morning. I wanted to talk about a new coalition that we formed to attack one of the major elements of mass incarceration.
Okay.
The group is called the Coalition to End Supervised Release. In 1984, in the middle of the Reagan years, Congress passed a sweeping criminal reform bill called the Sentencing Reform Act of 1984. In that act, they created the United States Sentencing Commission, and they abolished the ancestral sentencing component called parole, where you had a sentence, you had 5 to 10 years, whatever the sentence was, you come up for parole, and you get to spend the part of your sentence outside. You're not in prison anymore. What they did in 1984, they abolished parole, and they created this thing called supervised release.
Mm-hmm.
So there is no more parole in the federal system. No federal system starting in 1987 when the act became implemented. There are no more sentences that have parole. You have to serve your full sentence, whatever it is. Then when you come out, they impose upon you this thing called supervised release. And in many cases, the term of supervised release is longer than your prison term. And when you come out on supervised release, you can be put back in prison over and over again for technical violations of your conditions of supervised release.
Okay.
Such as, so you didn't, they say you had a dirty urine, you didn't get a job, you didn't do this. So this is a way to keep putting people back in prison without having to actually convict them of a crime and having them gain due process of going through the courts. It is totally unconstitutional, and our group is now engaged in the process of challenging all sentences with supervised release, and our goal is to abolish it and declare it unconstitutional.
Okay, so you are the Coalition to Abolish Supervised Release.
Coalition to End Supervised
To
Release.
end. Okay.
And our email is endsupervisedrelease@gmail.com.
Okay.
Endsupervisedrelease@gmail.com. We're having our next meeting this coming Tuesday next week at the Shaw Library at 7th and R Street Northwest, the lower level conference room, 6:30 p.m. If people have sentences of federal sentence and D.C. sentences, because D.C. is basically grandfathered into, they have terms of supervised release too. Whoever has a term, if you're on supervised release, you should come. If you know people, if you're about to be sentenced, you should come, because those sentences are unconstitutional. Once you serve your prison sentence, that's it. The government
let me ask a couple questions, because I want to make sure that I understand. So supervised release is a condition placed upon who exactly? If I've served time in a federal facility, am I automatically when I serve my time, do I automatically go to supervised release because I've been doing time in a federal facility, or how do we determine who gets supervised released or not?
As it is practiced, not as it is decreed by statute. As it is practiced, virtually any person who has a sentence in the federal system, if you have a federal conviction, the courts will impose automatically a term of supervised release. Supervised release statutorily is not mandated to be included into a prison sentence. Mm-hmm. It is only statutorily required for a very small class of crimes, such as child predator convictions and terrorism convictions. Every other offense, it is optional, but they dole it out like jelly beans, and defense attorneys don't attack it. The prosecutors probably don't even know it's optional, and certainly the defendants don't know it's optional. But according to statute, once you have served the term, and this is Section 18 U.S.C. 3583E1, once you have served at least a year off on supervised release, you can request termination of the remaining term of your supervised release. Most lawyers don't know it. Most people don't know it. Probably most attorneys and even the judges don't know it. So we are going to statutorily attack everything and get this thing ruled unconstitutional. The Supreme Court in this past term issued a major ruling attacking one element of supervised release. Mm-hmm. There was a person who was convicted of pedophilia, child abuse. He was giving a term of over 5 years to life of supervised release. In other words, once he would get out of prison, he would be on supervised release for the rest of his life. Mm-hmm. He was said to have violated a condition of supervised release. the judge imposed another term of 5 years in prison. He attacked that term, saying, look, you can't put me back in prison for that amount of term without allowing me a jury trial. And the Supreme Court agreed with him. So the Supreme Court has, in this term, collaterally attacked another section of Title 18 concerning gun laws. What I'm trying to say is these things are happening, and you hear about what the Supreme Court ruled about gerrymandering and the census question, but obviously the Supreme Court issues a lot of ruling, and they issue a lot of ruling around criminal legal system. And so these things are coming out, but because we don't follow what everything the Supreme Court does, we only go by what the white press says you should be worried about. When for black people particularly, we should be on any and everything that has to do with criminal procedure, criminal law, criminal case precedent, because we are disproportionately affected by whatever happens. So, but we don't attack, and the black groups, no black law groups that I'm aware of are monitoring and keeping these things. But anyway, our coalition is doing that.
Okay, now tell me who's part of your coalition.
We have people from the National Reentry Network. We have individual people who are on supervised release. We're trying to get people from the ACLU. We want any and all people who actually want to see versus just talk about ending mass incarceration. Mm-hmm. The only way you end mass incarceration is you have to dismantle everything that creates mass incarceration. Mm-hmm. So supervised release was created in the middle of the Reagan years to be able to keep putting particularly black men at the time in prison indefinitely without having to convict them of new crimes. So they have basically criminalized and made a prisonable offense things that are not crime. So, like I say, you don't have a job. You missed this meeting. You were, and this is a big one, you're associating with known felons. In other words, you got a brother, these are your
cousin come by to cook out.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's a violatable offense. But it's not crazy. It's not. It's like the slave codes. Okay, we can't say we're putting you back in prison because you're black. We'll say we're going to put you back in prison because of what black people do. Black people hang out with other black people, many of which have had a conviction. Black people, do marijuana. Okay, marijuana is no longer, a criminal offense, but for the purposes of supervised release, you can get a dirty urine because you have these legal substances in your body.
Wait, okay, forgive me. Hold on. I don't want to miss what you just said. Okay. I have been convicted. I did my time in a federal facility. I come out. I'm on supervised release. I come to Washington, D.C., where personal usage is acceptable. It's legal. Okay. I personally ingest marijuana. I provide a sample, and they can detect marijuana in my urine, and I'm in violation federally again?
Yes, because under the federal system, marijuana is still a controlled substance.
That's crazy.
But no, Jamila, it's not crazy. It's insidious.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Get the language straight. These white people know exactly what they're doing, and most of us have no clue.
So I know that I'm going to get some people message and be like, Jamila, stop saying crazy. That's bad language. Okay. I really appreciate you calling in to have this discussion. This is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. 2018 was part of a fellowship with John Jay College of Criminal Justice, the Langolith Foundation, where I did a lot of research around the neurology of what happens to a person when they are put in solitary confinement. I specifically looked at people likely to have backgrounds of abuse. So foster kids, children who were beaten by their parents. So that's pretty much everybody in prison. Asterisk, not everybody. But this is a whole other thing, because we know that a lot of people come out of incarceration self-medicate. Now, if they do it with cans of beer, that's okay. If they do it with cigarettes, that's okay. If they do it with sex, that's okay. If they do it with marijuana, and depending on where they are, let's say they're doing it in a place that's okay, then all of a sudden it's not acceptable because the federal statutes supersede where they live, which doesn't. I don't know that I'm okay with how that works. Friend, remind everybody. Okay, so you are the Coalition to End Supervised Release.
Right.
The Gmail address for people who want to send an email and find out more information is endsupervisedrelease@gmail.com.
Right. And they can call and or they can call 202-390-6398. And our next meeting is Tuesday, July 23rd, the coming Tuesday next week. 6:30 p.m. at the Shaw Library, 7th and R Street, Northwest, right across the street from the Shaw, the R Street exit on the Shaw Metro. 6:30, Shaw Library, lower level conference room.
All right, that's 6:30 next Tuesday. Once again, let me give that phone number, 202-390-6398. I appreciate you calling in. I'm definitely going to send an email. We need to have y'all come on and talk more in depth about what you're doing and why your work is necessary. Part of the difficulty that I personally have, in helping to tell these stories is that there's so much that you don't know unless you know to ask about it.
Right. One last thing, just for your information, I have already met with 4 congressional offices, okay? And they all agree that they were all Democrats. Most of 3 of them are on the House Judiciary Committee, which has oversight over all criminal issues, criminal legislation, and so forth. And that's why I met with them. And the aides who I met with were totally down with the thing. The issue is always with Congress. What are they going to do?
Well, when you have a body who's concerned more with their own reelection than their governance, asterisks, not all Congress people, but come on.
No, and my point is that the only way, like most things, get traction is that for this particular issue, the people who are sentenced, the people who have imposed these terms of supervised release have to be the biggest advocates of themselves, their families, their relationships, people who they like, love, and associations with. It is always a grassroots thing, and it can be done. We are going to write the legislation to abolish this thing. We are not going to wait for nobody. We're not going to wait for the people who created it to be the ones to abolish it. We're going to write it. We're going to set the terms, and this is part of a holistic structure that the white ruling supremacist class has created in all of these little tentacles that trickle down into the different statutory and policy formations that we don't even know exist. That goes to do with bail, that goes to do with supervised release, the death penalty, particularly in D.C. All D.C. Convicted people are sent miles and miles away, hundreds of miles away, to wherever in the federal system, causing people to not be able to visit them, causing them to have to spend lots of time and money. All of these things create an onerous burden on particularly people in D.C., people convicted in D.C., because they're all subjected to the federal system policies and practices. And so this is all in part and parcel. But this key thing, there are more. You got to understand this. There are more people being put back in prison for violation of supervised release on a monthly level than there are people being convicted of new crimes.
Wow. That's...
In other words, there would not be private prisons. There would not be halfway houses. There would not be people making money off telephones and commissaries. And without people being put back in prison, the prison industrial industry will collapse. So they need the product before they can have the exploitation.
Incredible. One more time, I want to let people know, okay, Coalition to End Supervised Release, Shaw Library, right outside of that Metro stop, next Tuesday evening, the 23rd, 6:30 p.m. This is, you're going to get an email from me today. We need to connect offline because this is definitely, more reporting, frankly, that needs to be done, more conversation that needs to be had. And, I'm coming to this learning from ground zero, and that's a shame because I have been, studying and reporting on American incarceration for some time. And, this is new to me. I sadly have to admit. I thank you so much for your call. I appreciate that. So, we're going to take a very short break. And, when we come back, if you want to try and call in, now is the time, 202-588-0893. But, we're not ending the show without talking about, the squad and what this means for our democracy, that the head of the executive branch is reverted to natalist attacks. Again, NPR says it is not right to call the language racist. So I'm going to try and abide by that just for this particular show because I want to see if I can do it. So how am I doing? 202-588-0893. We'll be back in just a moment.
WPFW, Washington.
Listen anywhere, available everywhere.
The most exciting listener-supported station based in D.C. Listen to The Morning Brew, Public Affairs, Don't Forget the Blues, Jazz and Justice, Music Performance, Live at 5, Late Night Jazz, Jam Session, Into the Dawn, Gospel Music, Latin Flavor.
Download our app.
Celebrating over 40 years of broadcasting in the capital city.
Blessings we are reap and we coursing on full. Oh, in a rise and boast.
Sounding the Big Pond. Join us for some offbeat looks at American and German life every Monday at 6 p.m. on WPFW. From pretzels and beer to Detroit's techno scene, from Germans roaming Utah and Harleys to the challenges of being an expat mom. So much is the same, so much is different. Brought to you by WPFW in cooperation with the Goethe Institute as part of Wunderbar Together, a year of German-American friendship. Mondays at 6 p.m. on WPFW.
Good morning. It's Jamila, and you are listening to OMG, Oh My Government, of course, on your station for jazz and justice. We are Pacifica's very own station in the nation's capital, WPFW 89.3 FM. ProStart Funding is a sponsor of this show, and ProStart Funding wants to give you cash for your house. They pay top dollar. They promise that they will not waste your time. They can close quick. If you are interested in finding out more, you could ring them up at 301-683-8651. Again, that's ProStart Funding. They're at 301-683-8651. Let me go ahead and take this next caller. Good morning. Welcome to OMG.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
I'm fabulous. Tell me how you're doing.
Oh, I'm good. You know, I wanted to just bring out a point of, about what we're dealing with as a black people in not only Washington D.C. but in the country right now, and something that we have to be aware of. I think that the powers that be, and I mean not necessarily the powers of real power, but the money, the people who control the money, that are buying the policies that they want to see take place in Washington, D.C. and throughout the country. The thing that I'm noticing is that we as black people many of us are very complicit in that we will accept a paycheck to further their aims, sometimes knowingly, sometimes not knowingly. But I think that that's something that we have to be very aware of in media, in housing, in government. A lot of times we're furthering, and I'm talking the city council, we're furthering the plans of gentrification. We're furthering the plans of black economic disinvestment. We're furthering the plans of black incarceration in the name of professionalism a lot of times. We're furthering the aims of miseducation in the university. So these people that are doing these things to us, they fund both sides. So not only do they fund their aims, but they fund us to help them with their aims. And that's just something that I want to put out there because I think we're missing it.
I so appreciate your calling in today. You know, it is an issue that we do have to think about. You know, if the house is too big and the kids can't afford the property taxes, grandmama's house is getting sold, and the people who are going to move in and get programs to fix that up are likely not going to sell it back to your family. Acres and acres and acres of prime real estate, resort property, was stolen from my personal family because air property is one of the things that they claim when taking lands that belong to formerly enslaved people and poor people who have had generational land. I'm a shout out right now my people in Pittsburgh at ProPublica. They're a news organization that looks at economic and justice issues. They're doing some really great reporting around air property. I hate them because I ain't them. That's a joke. As I research my own family history and recognize the multiple millions of dollars in wealth through land that was denied me and those in my bloodline, it makes my blood boil. But holding on to property is one thing, but the liquidation of it can also bring benefits. So that's a conversation that we definitely will have. Now, I'm so excited. Okay. Is this Gilda?
Yes, it is. Hi,
Jamila. Oh, my goodness. How you doing, Gilda?
I'm great. Thank you for speaking with me this morning.
Thank you for calling in. Now, I need my listeners to know who you are very quickly. So Gilda Squire is a PR goddess. This is the woman that can show everybody else how it's done. A dear friend for a very long time took me to see my very first Broadway show, Aida, with Tony Braxton, what is it? Elton John's Aida on Broadway, Mickey Dolenz, my favorite monkey. And we have been friends ever since. And, now Gilda's claim to fame is that your client that's setting the world on fire. I'm going to let you tell everybody who she is.
Well, I have the great privilege and honor of working with Misty Copeland, the first African-American principal dancer at American Ballet Theater. She was historically promoted in 2015.
Yes. Misty, who I love, who is brilliant, who is doing for the world of ballet what the Williams sisters have done for the world of tennis.
And Tiger Woods for the world of golf.
Yes.
Yeah.
So first of all, congratulations on all of the wonderfulness that you two are doing together. Misty was just near town recently at Wolf Trap dancing, and I was out of town. Otherwise I would have gone. And I have a bunch of friends that showed me, video on their cell phone. It was grainy and horrible, and it was still the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
And she'll be back, I'm sure. This is her third time performing at Wolf Trap since 2016.
Yes.
So she loves performing there. It's beautiful.
So, what is it like, Gilda? Because while we applaud the accomplishment, there's a lot of behind the scene work that people don't even know has to happen to get to this point. I'm in awe of the barriers you've had to break down.
Listen, we're in awe of them even today. I mean, we're still breaking them down, right? I mean, the work doesn't stop. And in fact, a lot of people thought that when Misty was promoted in 2015, that we were done, our jobs were done, you've been promoted, it's over. No, this is the beginning. That was really the beginning. Even though we've been working together since 2011. And I one of the reasons why I thought it was important to talk to you today is in thinking about the 4 minority congresswomen and this tremendously tragic public battle that they're having with the occupant of the White House. You think about, someone like Misty, very similar in a very white world of classical ballet, and was often, when she started to speak out about the need for diversity not just on the stage, but in the audiences and behind the scenes in these ballet companies, she received a tremendous amount of backlash. Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't know that. There are these ballet blogs, where these ballet aficionados are, commenting, and there was a lot of hatred spewed her way. And it was very hurtful to her, where they basically were like, I remember seeing one commenter say, "Shut up and just dance." Mm. And it was very hurtful to her because she's like, this is part of what it is to be an American citizen, to have a voice, to have a platform, to do good with it. And there were a lot of people who weren't happy about Misty speaking out, just like there are a lot of people now unhappy based on the prodding by the President of the United States about these 4 women speaking out.
Mm-hmm. This particular show here, OMG, Oh My Government, is a place where I love to tout the fact that my favorite amendment is the First Amendment. 14th is real close because, I'm as a black person descended from enslaved people, I am only a citizen by writ of Constitution. So 13, 14, 15, I'm real protective of those. Yes. But the First Amendment that guarantees us the right of freedom of the press, freedom of religion. For me, I take that as freedom that I don't have to have a religion. People forget that one of the most important freedoms guaranteed to us in our First Amendment is the freedom to petition our government for redress of grievances. Right. What that means is that if you're not happy with what your government is doing, it is the most American thing you can do to stand up and say, I object.
That's right.
That's what makes this country distinct and wonderful. That's what makes this country important. And it just, it breaks my heart, that people don't remember that that's our right. And when we have public figures who choose to exercise their right by birth to that First Amendment, it seems to be those who are kissed by the sun who are told, shut up, ball player, get up off your knees and play.
Right.
Shut up, dancer, dance. Shut up,
Singer,
other
sing.
ball. Yeah, exactly. Entertain. Here we are. Entertain us.
Another great example when she performed at the Super Bowl, and in all of her glorious, blackness, and there was this outrage. Like, how dare she? And that was artistic expression that she was entitled to offer as part of her show. And so I think that there are so many examples, as upsetting as this is, as extremely disappointing as this is, we can pull any number of examples of where people of color and women of color in particular are being told to shut up, to sit down, be grateful that you even are here. You don't need to have a voice. Just sit there and be quiet. And so bringing it back to Misty, we went through that. We still go through that, even though she is now at the pinnacle of classical ballet, even though she's selling out arenas around the world, even though she has a name and a platform, we're still going through it. So it doesn't stop. The work doesn't stop. And so I'm very proud of these four women, Representatives Omar and Presley. I can't believe I won't even call his name. I can't believe that he actually said, is she related to Elvis Presley? I mean, it's just, But I'm very proud of these women for having stood there. I don't know how many of your listeners saw the press conference, but it made my heart glow that that each of them, she, and she, did not sit down and be quiet in the face of being bullied.
It's so important in this moment as well, because we see these four congresswomen. Yes, they're junior congresswomen, and that's the price that we have to pay when this is the first time in the history of the U.S. we've had this many congresswomen at once, when we've had this many congresswomen who are women of color at once. The fact that we have it's 2019, we're just, talking about the first Muslim American congresswoman. And, the attacks that went unabated, but that chant, for people who don't remember history, there's some grainy black and white footage in Germany that we need to not look away from. The chant, send her back, send her back, send her back. I'm trying not to incur an FCC fine. So how do I do? Okay. Send her back. When we have the head of the executive branch actually fomenting this hatred and this fear, but
saying that it's not racist.
Yeah. Saying that it's not racist, saying go back and then come back once you have something to offer to us, when these are servant leaders who are advocating for not just their constituencies, yes, their constituencies, but all Americans. And this is what we citizens are dealing with. It's dangerous times, and it's so important. Very. It's so important that we recognize this and we stand against it every chance we have. I again want to point out, this is not in a vacuum. Our politics is informed by our policies, which is informed by our reporting. Hello, First Amendment, which is informed by our art. So when our artists stand up and speak out, when our artists, make a point of letting it be known that not only are they artists and performers and entertainers, they're citizens and they have rights and responsibilities as a due course of that citizenship. It is so infuriating to hear people say, "Oh, well, just be quiet." Particularly, be quiet, you woman. That really gets my hackles up. I'm so not.
Well, I will say this: if Misty Copeland had been quiet when she was being told to repeatedly, we would not have people of color, black and brown people, of all ages and of all generations coming to see her perform. We would not see black and brown people flooding Wolf Trap to see her perform. And so, in essence, what her bravery and courage did was open up a world that was previously uninhabited, really, by us, wasn't truly open to us or welcoming to us. Because I got to tell you, I remember my very first performance that I went to at the Met Opera House at Lincoln Center in New York City. And I don't remember the performance, but I remember being excited to see the ballet because before working with Misty, I had no real exposure to it. And I went with a guest, and I remember looking around thinking, wow, it is almost as if we've left the country because there was no diversity whatsoever in the audience. You may have seen one black or brown person, two black or brown people, period. It was just completely, Caucasian, overwhelmingly older, very much, a certain socioeconomic group, meaning much more privileged and wealthy. And to see now children coming into that space, excited in their tutus,
yes,
holding their mother's hand.
And I want to shout out my own little boy who loves the ballet. He loved Misty, loves Misty, and now likes ballet because he's watching it going, okay, so Mom, where's Misty? And I'm going, but Misty's not in this one, He's, I didn't know that.
But that's what having a voice can bring about. That's what having a voice means. And so that's where bravery and courage in the face of fear and bullying becomes so important, as scary as it might be.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't even know what it took for those women to come together, but I was glad to see them band together and come together before the world and stand down their bully.
Indeed. Gilda Squire, publicist extraordinaire, friend of mine, and just amazing. Thank you for calling in today. I so appreciate that. What's next for you? What do we need to look at and come out and support? Not that you need help, but
listen, as a black woman in a business of her own, I always need help and support. So thank you. I work with Angela Bassett, the amazing Angela Bassett.
The beautiful, talented Yale graduate.
Morehouse honorary doctorate. Yes, Angela Bassett. She has a new movie coming out on Netflix, and if you have Netflix, check it out on August 2nd, Otherhood. It's funny. You rarely get to see Angela in all of her comedic glory, but you get to see it here. She takes you through the range of emotions in this movie, and so I think it will be enjoyable. It's about the other side of motherhood when you have that empty nest, so that's why it's Otherhood.
Okay. Yes, indeed. Mother's Day happens, and them children you birthed and nurtured ignore you. It hits the fan. I've been waiting for this. And August 2nd, I know where I'll be. Home Netflixing and, serving the men I live with because, we got to talk about women's roles in the household. But anyway, I'm getting my Angela Bassett on in a week. I want to thank you so much for being with me this hour. This brings us to the end of this particular edition of OMG, the community watch and comment portion here at WPFW. I'm Jamila. Please be well. We'll talk again next time.